Bobo is asking, I have to host a podcast in a few weeks. Any tips on how to effectively interview people on a podcast? Yes. First of all, one thing you could do, maybe it's too late now, but one thing that helps a lot is to make sure you bring on somebody that you will actually find interesting, so you don't have to exhaust yourself pretending that you're finding them interesting. You know what I mean? Yeah, interviewing somebody that you genuinely find interesting is going to be so easy because you don't have to think too much about what you're going to say, because you are just so motivated to just you genuinely have questions, like it just jumps out of you organically. You know what I mean? So if you interview people that you genuinely want to listen to, then most of the conversation that you're going to have with them doesn't require you doing any work other than the conversation you would have with them privately anyways, because you genuinely want to know their opinion about this and that, right? So that's one advice. Another advice I have is, do have some go-to questions in case, because some guests make it very easy for you and they just have so much to say that you're not going to work you don't have to worry about like making sure you move the show forward. It's just going to be actually the other way around. You're going to have to, like, most of your effort is going to be like having them to making them stop so you could go to the next topic, right? So there's guests come into challenging guests come in two forms, right? One form is like me as a guest. It's hard to like get them to like stop talking so you can move on to the next this topic. But the other challenging guest is like, if you don't push them with questions, they'll just not speak, right? You have to like constantly ask them questions, and sometimes you don't know which guest you're gonna have, right? Actually, the second type of guest is as the more challenging. So it would be better for you to have some questions prepared in case you have the second type of guest. But if it happens to be not an issue, you don't have to go to your list. You know what I mean? You could just have it as a go-to in case your guest needs help with uh talking points, right? And yeah, and also like just have some bullet points just there, on the screen next to you or on your phone next to you, just as a way to give, even if you don't read the questions directly, just to know, like, we could start with this and see where it goes and then move on to here. Like, have a plan ahead of time, right? But don't be rigid. Don't be like, I'm going to ask you these questions. Like, be a little bit organic, right? Just comment on what they said. Maybe ask some questions based on something they said, not just questions that you have pre-prepared. However, be also mindful that you're not talking most of the time. That's something I'm guilty of a lot. I notice, I mean, if you are talking, it's better if you're talking about what the guest said instead of telling your life story to the guest. I've noticed some hosts invite you over and then you say one thing and then they say, oh yeah, that reminds me of my experience with this, and then they spend like 5 minutes talking about themselves. And I'm like, well, why did you have the guest there? Because you could have done that on a show that when you didn't have the guest there, right? um so I'm not saying don't do that at all, but if you do it, keep it short, okay? Because sometimes the guests that you admire so much, and this is the only time you get to speak to them, and then you might be very interested in your guest knowing something about you, okay? So, and this is the only chance you get. So I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm just saying if you do it, make sure the guest is not just sitting listening to you just talk about your life story, right? What else tips I could give? um Keep it casual, in my opinion. Just think like, make it feel like it's a conversation, that if it wasn't on a show, like, just think like, is this a conversation I would be having with this person if I were just sitting in a living room with them on a couch and just chatting, right? Does it come across like that? Just keep it organic. Don't make it like very formal. Just be like, we're just chatting. It's okay. It's just chatting, right? That and oh yeah, sometimes if your guest is not confident, it helps to confirm what they're saying and give them some brownie points by saying like, oh, that's very interesting. Oh yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, yeah, I can relate to that. I can relate to that. That makes, like, wow, that made, like, oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. And stuff like that. That will make them feel like, oh yeah, if they lack confidence, this is gonna make them feel like, oh yeah, I'm doing this right. Like, this is great. The host loves that. I must be doing something great, and then it encourages them to open up even more.
Hey guys, if you want to join these streams live, get your comments and questions read by Ali and Armin and the guests, and most importantly, to get full access to the full video versions of all these episodes, become a patron. Link in the description below.